Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for February 17th, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating, and also present are Laria Scola, who is sharing his screen, and we'll start off the discussion. Aaron Mikhail, Gaurav Malawat, Quinn Pham, Ralph Kohler, and Simo Helston. Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Benji.
Offersham just joined.
Right. So the issue number that we are talking about right now is 2458127. The issue title is show field/field storage summary instead of field type on field listings. And this has been reviewed by the team previously, but I wanted to bring this issue to the attention of the team because of a specific wording that I wanted to double check with the team to make sure that it is the right one. Just to summarize the issue, the issue is to show additional information about the field, so both the field storage and the field instance, when we are showing a list of fields that belong to a content type. And so I have that over here so I can show how that looks like right now, just to give a little bit of an idea what that actually means. So in some cases, for example, in the case of entity reference, right now, the field type says that it's an entity reference, but it doesn't explain you any of the critical aspects of that entity reference, such as what entity type we are referencing or what bundles are selected for the reference. And those are often quite important for understanding what you can actually do with the field. Sometimes it can be obvious based on the label and machine name, but sometimes that might not be the case. So that's why we are adding some new APIs that allow us to get this information from these fields and show it as part of this list. And the specific aspect that I wanted, if there's other feedback, I'm open to any feedback that we have about this change, but the specific aspect that I wanted to discuss, at least at first, was the wording of this, the label of how we introduced entity type that we are referencing to. And right now it says reference entity type, and I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but I think the term entity is something that we are not using very often in the UI. At least in the field UI, it was quite hard to find any usages of the entity. There are few totally, but it seems like we are kind of dancing around the concept of entities when we introduce concepts in the UI.
Pause for a moment. So I think the screen you're looking at already has the patch applied.
Yes, it has the patch applied.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands the context. We're looking at the manage field screens. Without the patch, that column under the field type, those are all links, aren't they? Going
Yes.
to the storage settings, not the field settings.
Yeah.
Which you can also get to from the operations column. Exactly, thank you. So this is the page that the links would go to. So part of this issue is to remove those links so that the only way you can get to that page is the link that Laurie just showed us. So it looks like we're not linking to anything at this point, but we're adding more text to the field type column. Is that right?
Yes.
Any other questions on the context? I just checked and I commented on this issue over 5 years ago. And as Ari said, it did come up at the usability meeting. Okay, so go ahead. So your question is about the particular wording of using the word entity.
Yes. So right now we are using the term reference entity type, but the entity is not a word that we commonly use in the UI. And for that reason, I was thinking if first I wanted to validate if that was the case, because I know that you have worked on a lot of issues that touch these kinds of wordings. And then if that is the case, then see if you have any sort of commonplace or I would say learnings from those previous issues on what kind of alternative terms we would be using here.
Aaron, go ahead.
Thanks, Benji. Sorry, I'm just gonna drink some water. Okay, so I think in this case, yeah, we generally try to avoid like exposing the word entity in the UI. I have a feeling the reasoning generally is because we want to be more specific. Like instead of talking about entities, we want to talk about media or talk about taxonomy or content. You know, in this case, I feel like it will be hard to avoid it because we're talking about an entity reference field. And so to me, if I was coming here and I was looking at this and I was configuring that, it would probably make sense to be using the term entity because I don't think we have a better way that I'm aware of to describe that. That is what we tend to call it, you know, an entity reference field. So yeah, I don't see a particular issue in this context with the terminology. And in fact, it's probably good that we're being consistent in this context because, you know, like using the term reference entity type below the term entity reference, like that, you know, provides the same context for the user when they're looking at this. So it's pretty clear what it is they're looking at. So that would be my feelings here on that.
I just wanted to show this view because that's another instance where we talk about referencing, and that's where we are a little bit more abstract. We say type of item to reference. That's the label of selecting the target entity type.
Right, so that's kind of not, yeah, so there's an element of inconsistency there in terms of how we talk about it in UI. So I guess I would be more concerned with ensuring we have consistency rather than you know, what specific, whether we call it an entity or an item. And there's an argument to say actually we should just be saying entity because that's what we call it in our documentation, that's what we call it in code, you know. So but I'll pass over to Ralph to, I'm sure he you know, that's my feeling on that anyway.
Yeah, Ralph, go ahead.
Yeah, but I agree with Aaron that on the details page to add basically the entity type there as well. Maybe because it's more clear that way. And another detail I wonder about on the other page here.
Which
Currently,
page? This
on
one?
that page here, yeah, correct. Thank you. I wonder, would it make sense at the moment you have 3 rows, first entity reference, then referenced entity type media, then media type image, to shorten it basically and maybe put image in parentheses after media and leave media type out, because that maybe it's already clear, and in case you have a content type with more than 5 fields, then and you have several entity reference fields, then yeah, the thing could get lengthy, and yeah, if you have that in a single line, maybe it's clearer and shorter, and yeah, I'm not sure. It just looks a bit stacked with those 3 lines for a single field.
Yeah.
I was thinking along the same lines, and in this context, could you click on the Add Field button?
Yes.
And select a field type? So if we wanted another reference field, we would go under the reference section and choose media. So given that that's how we add a media field, I think that just using on one line, as Ralph suggested, reference media, whether parentheses or colon or what have you, rather than 2 lines, makes a lot of sense. It's consistent with the add field screen.
Yeah, this is currently dictated by the technical implementation of this. I don't know if you want to go to those details, but the challenge is that the information is coming from multiple different places because we have the field instance and field storage. The field storage owns the configuration around which entity type you're referring to, and then we have the field instance which configures which bundles you reference to. So you're basically the bundle is configured from here, and they come from two different places right now. And for that reason, using parentheses or approach like that could be really challenging from technical perspective.
Okay, well, this is the usability meeting, and we have the luxury of not worrying about implementation details. But we can give a secondary recommendation. Personally, I think that putting it on one line is the best for usability. Can we get a quick vote on that? Agree, disagree?
Can I get clarification? So we are talking about getting are we going to have the media on the timeline with the entity reference text?
Yes, and I think Lowry is about to use browser tools to demonstrate that. I see a couple of suggestions in the chat, and I am responsible for reading them into the chat, into the recording. So Aaron suggested entity reference and then in parentheses media : image. Simo mentions a related issue. Maybe we can look at that in a few minutes. And Quinn gives a thumbs up to Aaron's suggestion. And so did Ralph. So, right, so Larry has put in what Aaron suggested in the chat. So that's a little longer than what I was suggesting. I was suggesting something based on what we see in the dropdown when we add a new field, but I seem to be in the minority. So putting it on. Oh, and actually, you're combining all three lines into one now.
Yes. That was one of the suggestions, I think, from the chat from Aaron. I can certainly do the second line approach too.
Yeah, I've just been doodling away in the background here with different options. So I also I had a 2-line option, which was then entity reference and then type : image and brackets media. But then I realized actually you can have multiple, as you demonstrated, you can have like image and video. So we could even shorten it to just the field type could be just reference parentheses media : image, video. Or we could do 2 lines. I'm also mindful of Ralph's suggestion that when you have a lot of fields, that starts to get long. But actually, I was in a meeting earlier this week where we were potentially talking about a content type with over 100 fields. So I think we decided that over 100 fields on a single content type is not really a good idea. But we're going to split it up. But that is, if you did have 100 fields here, 3 lines for every reference field could be a lot.
Simo has something to say.
Yeah, so I was thinking that because we can have like 15 different types listed, so it shouldn't everything be on one line for sure, because like maybe not 15, but at least 5 or 6, or especially with taxonomies. We can have loads of possible types there, or on not types, but those, yeah. But I think so. We should have like a very easily distinguishable what type of reference it's, if it's media, if it's content, if it's term. So that should be like easy to see. So I would maybe put that into parentheses, entity reference, parentheses, in parentheses, media. and then the different types, they would be like with a small, maybe smaller font like it is like here, and then on a separate row, so that but so that it would be, it would have main content that would be the first line, and the main content would include the entity type, and then the details would be like with less significant value.
Right. I personally feel strongly that we should not combine it all into one line. I think we should be consistent with the process for adding a new field. When we add a new field, the selection of a media reference is one step, and I would like to have that on one line rather than two lines. So entity reference media, or I would even prefer reference media. And then the settings for that field type, say which types of media are allowed, that I believe should be on a second line. So I really want two lines, not one line. One line for the type of field and a second line for the settings for that field. And that'll be consistent with other things in this column. I see Aaron is still making suggestions, putting it all on one line. So I guess we, at the moment, disagree. I hope we can come to consensus by the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I posted some follow-up ones because I actually, based on the most recent one, I said media reference based on what, just as you were talking, because, you know, you're right. When we add these things, we talk about them as reference fields, and like, you know, it's so thinking about it as like a media reference or a content reference or a taxonomy reference, whatever, and then like type below that, and then like the types. You know, is it actually, Laurie, is it correct the entity type you're referencing is set on the storage, or is that set on the field configuration?
The entity type is storage level setting.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so we could even talk, okay, because that almost, talking about it in the terms of like it being like a media reference or a content reference or whatever, or a block reference, like some ways makes sense, because like that's set on the storage level. So if you had multiple instances of this field, they're all going to be of that same type. So once you've set what the type is, it's kind of irrelevant that it's a, you know, that generically is a generic entity reference field. It's more about the fact it's like a media reference field, or, you know.
While you're doing that, I also want to mention that Ben Mullins has joined the meeting. Ben, do you have an issue you'd like to bring up? Or offer? And we're getting further suggestions in the chat. Quinn suggests on two lines, entity reference paren media, and then type audio, image, or video, which is pretty close to what I was suggesting. In fact, very close. Aaron, go ahead. Aaron, you're muted.
Thank you. One of the things I was noticing here is, for instance, at the top there, we have a body field, and we've got, now I have a vague memory of us discussing this before, text, parentheses, formatted, comma, long, comma, with summary. That there is combining the type and the, you know, elements.
No, I don't think it is.
Configuration. Is it?
I think if you add new field, text long summary is one of the options.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Yeah, never mind then. Okay,
but I'm really glad that you're coming around to my point of view, which is that we should have consistency between the two.
Yeah, I was going to say that if that was the case, then maybe that should also be a second layer, because I do want to make sure that we are being consistent across field types here. So that was what I was going to say, but obviously that's just the name of the field type. So
yeah, I really like media reference rather than reference media or entity reference media. So I like this suggestion. I'm not sure whether I prefer media type or simply type. I could go with either one.
Do we even need that? Sorry, I'm just gonna say, like, do we even need to stable the type? Like, would it look better or worse if it just listed, image comma video rather than type colon image comma video? Or is that too abstract?
So something to, sorry,
Go ahead.
not sure if I followed. What was can you repeat that question, Aaron?
Yeah, so like in the latest examples we have, the second line would be type colon, like audio, image, video. What if we just drop the type colon altogether and it was just audio, image, video on the second line? I don't know if that's too, then it's like it's not entirely clear what that means, or if that makes sense, or I'm also mindful, like if you do, as someone said earlier, if you have a lot of different types, like we want to try and provide as much space as possible to list them all.
And Simo is asking what happens if you have a JSON reference field.
Yeah,
And
so there are a lot of different kinds of complex references available. So with a very long kind of technical sounding types, and then we can have it might be clear to have a display that it's it's a reference, and then it would have the details like responsive image style reference or content language settings reference. For those three word things, it might be more clear to have first the definition that it's a reference, and then what kind of reference in parentheses.
Right. So to get that, I assume you'd have to enable the JSON API module on your site.
Yeah, but yeah, I noticed there are several like 3-word references possible also here on the screen share.
So I guess I brought up some technical constraints that we have earlier, and I'm wondering if so basically there were some concerns about that having 3 lines would increase the height of the table and increase the sort of amount of text that is on the page. I'm wondering, like, what is the severity of those concerns? Like, if it is that we have technical challenges and we are unable to implement a solution that renders this information on 2 lines, do we think that this is severe enough concern from the perspective of usability that we should avoid making a change altogether until we can come up with a solution that allows us to display this information on 2 lines?
Personally, I think that we can make a recommendation for a follow-up issue and answer the question you wanted us to answer at the start. And also Ralph has a comment in the chat. He thinks the label is needed. I wouldn't necessarily drop the media type label for sighted users that have the media reference context available in one glimpse. It is viable. But for screen readers, I am not necessarily sure if it would work without. And I tend to agree with Ralph that we should have the media type label and a few lines above that content type. I like it just for consistency with the form where you choose that on the field settings. Aaron was, I think it was the one suggesting that we remove it.
So I have a specific suggestion. I'm wondering if this might remove the amount of text that we have, but what if this is target? Is that too vague? But it would at least remove a lot of the text from here.
Okay, so for an interim solution, so that we can move the issue forward, you want to keep it on 3 lines as it is now, but shorten it from what was it originally? Entity type or referenced entity type. You want to change it to simply target.
That's just one idea. There could be other labels that we could use. That was just, I'm not sure if it's better than reference entity type, but it could potentially address some of that concern around having too much text in the table.
I guess one thing to be mindful of is, again, thinking of consistency, like what are the labels we use on the storage and edit forms? And because it helps create a cognitive link between those, what is there. Yeah, so maybe like, so for the second line, maybe it's like just, maybe we say type, and then, because we also don't want to make it too long. What do we use on the edit form?
Edit form, you mean when we enter the content?
When you're editing the field.
Oh, when you're editing the field, I see.
Yeah.
All right.
The field settings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's using the same label that we have there.
Okay. Now that probably comes from the underlying entity, right? So if it would say media type.
Yep. It's the same as it's coming from the same source as this. So for that, this one should say media type.
I like having something short, but I don't see target used anywhere. I would suggest simply shortening referenced entity type to reference type.
Yeah, like
Which,
target is used in render table.
Ben Mullins suggests references.
As the label for the second row, is that correct, Ben? I guess you can only have one entity type there, so I'm not sure if we should have it plural.
I think the idea of the plural is to say that this field references media or
I see.
node.
It would be a verb.
which I don't personally like. Because for one thing, we're not using references as a verb, as a label anywhere else. And it is shorter and less is more. I grant that. But if you look at the field settings page, we use reference type. It's the label of a section on that page. On the field storage settings, it's type of item to reference. So I could go with just type, or I could go with reference type.
Yeah, maybe reference type, because we want to be, we want to help distinguish the two lines. Yeah, I guess when saying it there, like if you've got in the second line, it says type : content, and then on the third line, it's like content type article. I feel like that reads fine, you know. It creates a relationship between those different lines.
And Ralph in the chat is suggesting singular, just reference. Again, references is a verb, it's not a plural. So I'm not sure we're getting any closer to consensus here. Let's try to gather some candidates and settle on one. So, you know, one candidate is what it currently says, which I'm not sure anyone likes, but it's referenced entity type. Another candidate is simply type. A third is reference type. What other? I guess reference.
Target was the one that I proposed at first.
Yeah, so let me just put into the chat a few of these.
Yeah, and Zoom chat now has reactions, so people could just thumbs up the ones they prefer if we put them all in the chat.
Okay, so I've got 4 at this point. Referenced entity type, which is what it currently has, and then reference type, and then either one of those two words. Any other suggestions? Or references, plural. Or should I be entering these as individual steps? Aaron, how does the
Yeah, because
reaction
like
work?
there's it like if I react, I can only react to your whole message. So if you put them as one on each.
Right. Okay, so I put in 5 alternatives there. Any others?
Trying to figure out how to react.
Yeah, I only have here copy and quote options.
Same here.
Let's see.
Oh, do you not? There's a little you don't see that there's a little button next to quote. This is add reaction, and it pops up with a little.
Oh, I don't have that.
Oh, okay. I see. Some people seem to have it, and some people don't. Maybe that's a soft. Maybe this is so new that some people haven't. Some people's clients haven't got the update yet. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I see.
Oh, if you I see people are able to click on the thumbs up, so it's there.
Yeah, I can click on existing. Maybe someone who has the feature, can you thumbs up everything? And then that will allow everyone to thumbs up.
Okay. I'll vote for everything then.
And you can then maybe at the end remove them more.
I'm a very diplomatic individual.
Except I don't seem to be able to thumbs up them, presumably because I'm the one who typed them.
Oh, I can thumbs up my own one.
Okay,
this is fun.
Yeah, everybody vote. Feel like we need some countdown music. Reference type seems to be the most popular.
I haven't figured out how to vote, but that's also my preference.
All right. It seems like there's at least some level of consensus then.
I'm having trouble seeing the results in aggregate. I just see individual messages that so-and-so reacted with a thumbs up.
All right, I can read the results also for the recording. So there's a reference entity type, which has 1 vote, reference type, which has 6 votes, references type 0, and target 1 vote.
Okay, and the ones with 1 vote are Aaron, because he was voting for everything too.
Yeah, I did active 1 from everything, but it seems like reference type I don't know if that's Aaron's preference, but
yeah, I just removed all my fake thumbs ups and thumbs up reference types, so that makes it 7 on that one.
Okay, yeah. So I think that is consensus for reference type. So that's after 40 minutes is the answer you to the question you wanted at the beginning. And we would also like a follow-up issue, and it will take some discussion.
Yeah.
But I think combining those first 2 lines into one, something like reference paren media or reference colon media or media reference, to be decided on that issue.
Yeah. I guess for context, me and a couple other folks at Acquia are working on like a bigger overhaul of the field UI UX, and it probably makes sense to open the follow-up, but it might make sense to look at that more holistically as well. The reason this one is just it has some API pieces that we need for doing the more holistic overhaul, and that's why it would be great if we could get this issue in before we proceed to that step. And once we have some progress on that area, I think feedback from this group would be appreciated as well. That's really good. I'm glad some effort is being put into that, and I do remember this issue, and I'm glad to see it finally getting some attention again. I occasionally think of it, but it's just not high enough on my to-do list.
I seem to remember there's an issue, which I presume is what you're centering around as well, which is the one that would kind of reverse the whole flow of adding fields to make it so that you select the widget first, and then it gives you the most appropriate field type for that widget.
The dream fields.
Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds
that's what we
familiar.
called it.
Yeah, dream fields. Sounds like when people use terms like blue sky thinking.
So we have a little more than 15 minutes left. Does anyone have an issue they'd like to bring up?
The issue I linked 303.1637 I put on the chat. It's also deals with the entity references, entity reference fields. So we might want to look at that.
Sure. Can you share your screen, or if not, I think I can.
Yeah, I can share it. I don't have that patch applied.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so this is issue number 303.1637. And here the issue is that if entity reference field, the entity type if the bundles are not selected, then the suggestion is that it should act as if all of them were referenced.
So do you have a Drupal site running where you can demonstrate where this comes up?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have.
Okay, I just put a link into the chat. If you click there, it's standard Drupal 10.1, no patches applied, with the Umami demo profile, and you can log in as admin. Anyone else on the call, of course, is free to use the same one.
Okay, so if I
So again, we're talking about entity references. So that's
Yes.
why Seema brings it up.
So let's add a field of taxon term references. So here we have the reference type, and here we choose which vocabularies to reference. So if I choose none and save, it's not allowed. So what that issue suggests that it would be allowed to leave this blank with non-selected, and then it would act as if would reference all of these. So all of the vocabularies would be referenceable from the field. So it would basically mean that it would act as if all of them were checked.
Right, and the difference would be that if you later add a new vocabulary to the site, it would also be allowed and you would not have to revisit this page.
Yes, and also we don't have the patch applied, but also if you would have only allowed, if you would only allow to reference recipes, then if you delete the recipe category, the reference this field would start referencing tags instead. So I think that's kind of something that it's hard to predict by the use of that kind of behavior. So that deleting receipt category would make this field then, as if it wouldn't have any selected, it would start referencing tags.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, so actually I wrote a bit of a story in the issue that if we would have content types dog, horse, kennel, and stable, and it's like a common knowledge that horses go with stables and dogs go with kennels. But if we would have a kennel content type that references dog content types, then if we delete the dog content type, kennels would have horses instead. And also, if we would add a new content type, fence material, that would be something totally different from any of those kennels or stables. Then kennels would have both horses and fence materials. So that's kind of something that we wouldn't want to see, I think. And
so,
yeah, and how I came to think about this now is that also leaving everything blank would kind of if then it would also affect how the listing page of fields, because then it might end up having a huge list of long list of text, but that would be, of course, a result of something unwanted behavior anyways.
Yeah, so the pattern that is suggested on this issue of leaving it blank to mean anything allowed, that's a somewhat problematic pattern, but we do see it several places in Drupal. Ralph, go ahead.
I see only one problem with the pattern is if you take, for example, if you configure a block, there you have, for example, the visibility on error pages, and there you have also two, for example, checkboxes for access denied and page not found. But there is the exact opposite. If no error pages are selected, no restrictions will be applied. This exact opposite pattern, and people always have to read to actually know in which context they are. Meaning, if left empty, it is everything is included, or the other way around. So it might be open for errors, and yeah, the cognitive load is also higher because you have to read actually or know where you currently are. So that might be a problem.
Here, because this is required, means that then there is no chance of error. That it's kind of it requires at least one to be checked. So that kind of makes it very hard to misunderstand at the moment.
And that's in that way it's correct, but as how I understand the issue is that the patch will remove that, and as soon as no checkbox is checked and it's saved, everything is basically. Oh no, sorry, I mixed it up. Sorry.
So let's see what happens when I. Let's see what happens when I delete this one. We put it in basic page or article. I think article. And here field test, and we edit this one. And here it's required, but it's not referencing anyone. So we can't edit that one.
So that's certainly a glitch.
Yeah. So this is the current behavior. But it doesn't have-
A couple of people would like to say something. I'm not sure who came in first, but go ahead, Larry.
So I just read through the original issue where the usability concerns were raised, and it was about, specific aspect that it might be easy to miss the bundle configuration in the middle of the form. We happened to run usability research just a few weeks ago, and we actually discovered that very specific aspect that users tend to miss those form elements in the middle of the form, and proved that it was helpful that they got the prompt that the bundle configuration is required. So from that perspective, it could lead into usability regressions because we have some insights that it is actually proving that it's helpful for some users.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm mindful that we recently an issue got committed to do something similar but with allowed text formats. So for instance, Simo, if you go to the body field on this content type into the edit form, you'll see that there is an allowed text formats option, which basically I believe would suffer from the same problem because it says if none are selected, all will be allowed. So what I wonder is if we could, I feel like the only way to really resolve this is to have a separate checkbox or a set of radio buttons or something that says, if you've checked the box, you're explicitly saying all can be allowed. Otherwise, it forces you to select like specific ones, and that way we avoid the issue of if none are selected, then all are allowed kind of thing unintentionally.
And we're getting a couple of thumbs up for that. I think that's certainly worth considering, but if we do it, we should do it comprehensively. Another example, Simo, could you go to structure and then block layout? And configure any block. So if you look at content type restrictions,
also,
or I guess it's the same as language type.
Actually, languages have this, like here, help text, whereas content types don't.
Whereas if you look at pages, it has the explicit radio buttons at the bottom. So what was just suggested is that we enforce this pattern all the time, that you have an explicit option to show or exclude the selected things. And it's a little extra visual clutter, but it's much more explicit. I think it would solve a lot of the problems and confusion. And if we did it everywhere, the consistency might be worth the extra visual clutter.
So I wonder if, as you said, I think it makes sense to do it more holistically. So I guess, does that mean as long as we have a follow-up issue open to address it, this issue could be progressed without that being blocked? Because I suspect it would be good to see that, this issue get done as well.
And a couple of comments in chat. Ralph suggests there's another issue we discussed a while ago in the context of the visibility tabs, visibility blocks, and maybe that's what we were just looking at. And Larry says it would be worth asking, what is the use case for referencing all bundles to get a better sense if we should make the change altogether? So I guess the issue that Simo brought up. And Quinn gives a thumbs up to Larry's comment.
Yeah,
And yes, Ralph is talking about the blocks that we were just looking at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is one use case where people usually or often want to reference all new content, all newly added content, but that's not actually in core because it's paragraphs. So with paragraphs, it's common to want to be able to add paragraphs so that they are able to reference them without additional settings. So with paragraphs, it often helps. But paragraphs is not part of the core, but there might be some other use cases where it makes sense to have all types referenceable automatically or kind of by default. So there is use cases for that.
And Larry gives this a thumbs up. Okay, we're getting very close to the end of the hour. There's another issue that will help a lot with paragraphs. I'll try to find it and mention it in the Slack channel. So I think one possibility for this issue is instead of simply removing the required option on vocabulary, as Larry points out, that presents certain problems. One option would be to add the radio buttons. And then I don't know if allow the checked vocabularies is selected, then keep it required. And if the other radio button is selected, then maybe the check boxes can all be unselected. But I think we can't go ahead with the issue as proposed. I think that, as Larry points out, that gives regressions. And Ralph found the issue. Thank you. This is 2986958. Add support for negating user role condition in block visibility. So we are at the top of the hour. Before we close the meeting, any last comments? Let's continue the discussion in Slack. And I have at least one issue I want to search and bring up. Thank you all for coming. It was a great discussion today. I'm glad we had a lot of people present, and we'll do it again next week. And thanks, Larry, for bringing these issues up. I'm glad to see them getting some traction again after a long time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, nice weekend. Bye.
Bye, thanks.